heavy breathing below me.
What do you get?
On digital replay, on the app, on your smart, on X, YouTube, and Facebook. The Sportscast. Expect the unexpected.
The Donut Bag presented by the Sportscast.
The Donut Bag, hosted by Joey Toscano. And here's your host, Joey Toscano.
Dude, I'm excited. That's the first time I've seen that, and I'm so excited.
I forgot we had an intro song, an intro video. How about that? We are big time
So
now.
cool. Yes. It's
I
great.
love it. That was awesome. Good
It
job.
was.
Oh
Yeah.
my!
You're in the big leagues now, Joe.
When I get a
You
sponsorship, look out, then we'll be in the big leagues. Stamps.com, come on down, man.
Right.
We could. How
Or
about ColorGuard? We can have. We can have the poop in the box people contact us. We could do commercials for that.
ColorGuard. Give them
We
a
have,
You've
call.
seen those commercials. They're like little boxes, and it's like
Right,
a little
it's like
animated box or whatever.
around.
We could have
Yeah.
him in the corner doing a little dance. You know what I mean? We should make it happen, Joe. I'm telling you.
Someday.
Maybe.
There's a joke in there somewhere about your podcast not being pooped.
Oh, yeah.
About ColorGuard.
Yeah, you guys should have heard what we were talking about before we went live. Let's just put it that way.
No, you shouldn't have. But yeah, maybe you should.
Speaking of poop in a box,
Speaking of poop in a box,
Steelers.
let's talk about the Steelers.
Omar Kahn talked to the media today. It was a lot of poop in a box.
yeah, exactly.
Yep.
That's a good transition.
Did anyone? So I didn't see it. All I saw like what people were reporting. So I decided it's like, oh, let me watch the press conference. Let me watch what he said on like the Steelers.com. So I go there and it's Omar Kahn talking, and then anytime anybody asked a question, it was like all the distorted sound. Like they didn't want us to hear the questions. So it was like a game of Jeopardy or something. Like he's giving the answers and we don't know what the questions are. It was so weird.
It was much easier from my
I can send you the transcript if
Kabali and those guys were tweeting out like as it was happening. And then, the transcript, that was much easier than trying to hear all of that.
If you really want to know the questions, which you probably don't, I'll send you the transcript. But it was
You can
basically
guess
just
them.
the same, you know.
Like
would
match
expect.
the question with the answer.
It was it was very informative. We now know everything about the Steelers, and Omar Kahn was very truthful, and so now we have all the answers. Just
All
kidding.
your concerns are put to bed.
Yeah,
I
he
know.
said nothing.
I was hoping you were anyway.
I want to go back a year to the scouting combine a year ago. Now, at the time, this was end of February of 2024. Kenny Pickett was still the quarterback. There were rumors about Russell Wilson coming and Justin Fields being available. Yeah. So at the almost exactly 1 year ago, they asked Omar Kahn. They said, "What's going on with the quarterbacks?" And Omar Kahn said, "We have full faith in Kenny Pickett." And somebody mentioned, "Well, you're gonna get Russell Wilson," and he just laughed. It's what about Justin Fields?
Like Kabali asked that in jest to poke at him, and they were like absurd.
We all thought it was the silliest thing. He was like, "That's the most silliest thing I've ever heard." And then literally a week and a half later, it all happened. So
Right.
That's the hard thing about Omar Kahn. You just don't know, what he's gonna do and what he says, and he's capable of anything.
And he's smart. He's smart about it, right?
Smart.
I mean, nobody's going to tip their hand, right? Unless you're Jerry Jones or some idiot GM.
You'd be a terrible GM if you stood up there at this meeting. And it's what I think people don't ever think about. I understand the desire to want to know and have this information. But I think for one thing, I don't think he totally knows, because there's still things to be decided that aren't just a matter of what he's going to say or do. And then on top of that, there's nothing to benefit from telling the fans any definitive answer, because then it's just going to complain about this and call it a stupid decision or complain about the process. So why bother telling us anything? I don't blame them.
Yeah, he shouldn't say anything. It's like if we were all playing cards, and I'm like, oh my god, I got a 2 and 3 threes. I'm doing great here, guys. Like why would you say what's going on in your mind or what you plan to do? It's like, it's Tomlin handles the media the same way. Omar Kahn handles the media the same way. They all do the same thing. It's like, we'll just give you stuff, and just so you have your content, but we're really not telling you anything.
Yeah.
But yeah, he basically said the same thing Rooney said.
Internet keeps.
Mm-hmm. He basically said the same thing that Rooney said that we don't have it. We were hoping to get a quarterback. We don't have one yet. Like, okay,
we want one of them. We're trying. Yeah. George Pickens is great. Thanks.
Okay, that made me laugh.
Mm-hmm.
That made
I don't feel like there's anything more, like, at least last year, like.
You okay, Allison?
My internet's being weird.
Oh, it doesn't seem to be weird on our end.
I'm fine. It's just I can't. It's cutting out on my end, and I don't know what's being said.
Why don't you get out and get back in?
Can I exit and come back?
Yeah.
Okay. Can I do that on here? Okay.
Yeah. I'm in IT, and that's basically all we do is tell people to shut it down and power it off, and turn it off and turn it back on again. Usually works. So
he said about Pickens. I had a really solid exit interview with GP. I can tell you he has a desire to be great and to be great here.
That made me laugh.
First of all, what else do you think George Pickens would say, right? Like, he would have to be like a box of rocks to say much other than, I want to be better, I want to play better, and I want to stay here. I mean, that would be, anything else would be ridiculously stupid. And what else could Kahn tell us but that it went well? He's got to try to continue to instill faith in the fan base. They're keeping him at this point. He's not going anywhere this year.
I think a lot of what we saw today was just,
no.
Sorry, Darren, go ahead.
No, I was just saying a lot of what we saw today was just very blasé. He's talked about, just things like that. That one kind of caught me off guard. Like, yeah, no kidding. He talked about, Broderick Jones going to be playing at left tackle, which we all pretty much know is going to happen. And we see him happening. And he's only played 129 career snaps at the position he was bred to do in the first place. So, I mean, there wasn't anything too revealing. And I don't think any of us here thought there was going to be anything earth shattering. But I think these will get a lot more interesting, obviously, as we go along. Trade deadline gets close and we start seeing some things happen.
Yeah, it'll all be.
Mm-hmm.
It'll all happen tomorrow. It'll all happen in a couple weeks when free agency starts.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we know something.
I feel like there's not as much. Like, we did have that whole big thing.
Yeah.
I don't think it's working.
Allison,
everybody's having trouble. I was going to say, I feel like we know something about Wilson and Fields soon, because if they're going to offer them something that they're going to agree to, it seems like that would be solved like prior to free agency. Do you know what I mean? If they were going to keep one of them, we would know, unless Fields goes out and shops around and there's nothing and we have no one and he returns, but I can't imagine that.
Well, and he talked about extending TJ Watt's contract possibly, which, that could also mean two things. So you can extend a contract while also lessening it, right? So maybe they're going to renegotiate the terms of his deal and extend it out longer, but, maybe to make room for different things. But, yeah, it's I tuned in like everybody else did with low expectations, and I think that's what we got, and I think that's what you're going to continue to get. But the fun thing there really is to debate is I just have this feeling that I think in a few weeks Fields is going to be the only quarterback here until draft day. I don't think Wilson's staying. That's just my
Skylar Thompson
feeling I have.
I agree. I think it's going to be Fields.
It's got to be Fields. It's the only thing that makes sense.
Super Bowl
could happen.
Allison,
did you hear those conflicting reports though about? Hi, can
What's
you
that,
hear
Allison?
me?
I can hear you. But conflicting reports about who?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I keep talking and it's like I'm not here. Which
We
is,
can
so I'm
hear
not
you.
sure if it was like because I was
It's like
having
you're
internet
just-
issues.
You're
It's
just
like
so
you
out of
talk-
sync.
Okay.
I don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
I
you guys
feel
sound-
like Mercury is in retrograde right now.
It's in Gatorade.
And now I can't remember what I was saying before that.
Conflicting
Right,
reports.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, conflict. Thank you, LeeAnn. You hear the conflicting reports that, like Cavoli, I think, says that he expects Wilson to be back, and then you hear about this relationship that he's got with Tomlin, and how Tomlin wants him, and whatever. So it's like, I wouldn't be surprised if it was Russell Wilson. I don't want it to be, but I also like that's the most Steelers thing that they could do. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
And I wouldn't put it past them, unfortunately. But I feel like Justin Fields is their best option if they want to do anything.
Yes. Wasn't that the rumor, though, that like Tomlin now wants Justin Fields and Omar Kahn or Art Rooney or somebody wants Russell Wilson, which I thought was interesting because during the season, Tomlin went all lone wolf or whatever and went with Wilson. And then now if he really does, if that's true and he wants Fields, then he's done like a whole 180. And that's really telling to me.
Yeah, but then you hear the other reports too, where it seems like the locker room is behind Fields,
Right.
and which, okay, I guess so. I mean, I don't know, it's like how have you been behind the guy that I don't know. It's still a quagmire. It's the biggest quagmire mess I've ever seen, and I'm not necessarily sure it's a bad one. We could be worse. At least we have two starting quarterbacks now, but until they figure this out. It's still,
sort of.
Still a little bit of a mess. And I think that's the other thing too is as you try to attract free agent wide receivers, they're going to want to know who's throwing them the damn ball. Those wild, crazy rumors of T. Higgins is coming here. I don't know. Apparently, the Bengals are putting together a contract that will make Jamar Chase the highest non-paid QB player in the NFL, which means what's left over for T. Higgins. I don't know. Technically, I think they can franchise tag him.
They can.
I don't know, but I still, again, I don't see T. Higgins jumping and skipping over here at the thought of, either of these two quarterbacks in play.
I think didn't Omar Kahn actually say something like, well, the first thing we need to do is figure out quarterback. And then once we see what quarterback we have, then we could get our wide receivers based on that quarterback, which makes a lot of sense. I would imagine
everything else will,
with Justin Fields, you're going to have a whole different kind of offense than you are with Russell Wilson. So, yeah.
And you might be able to attract a free agent having Justin Fields as a quarterback where maybe you couldn't if Russell Wilson was the quarterback. So yeah, it could, you know what I mean? Once they get that figured out, everything else should fall into place, not so easily, but in terms of wanting to get that free agent, that top talent free agent, that they need, they might come here if it's Fields and might not if it's Wilson. So yeah, there's a lot, weighing on that Steelers decision right there for sure.
Whether Joe decides to do the podcast on March 13th, the day after free agency starts, or the Monday after, that's going to be the interesting one where, I think we're going to have a lot to talk about because, again, it's kind of crazy as to what's going to be happening, who's going to be where, who's going to have money for what. And if you're already talking now about extending TJ Watt's contract, to me, that means you're restructuring it to a point where you're making it yourself affordable. They did just release that the NFL salary cap increased yet again. So the Steelers, who had quite a bit of money to spend, now even have more money to spend in free agency if they want to go shopping and if they actually do go shopping.
But I think that idea of having more money is almost like misunderstood by people because if you have more money to spend, then people want you to spend more money on them. Do you know what I mean? And I think people are going to demand more money, some of these guys. I also think you're looking at, what was it, like $60 million roughly or whatever they've got. They got to put a big chunk of that into a quarterback, plus have money to sign all these rookies. Like all of a sudden, to me, that $60 million starts to get eaten up really quickly when you're looking at a quarterback and potentially, I don't know who it would be, but potentially a wide receiver, maybe a cornerback, you know what I mean? Some other positions, maybe a defensive lineman. Now, all of a sudden, that money goes really fast.
In the NFL, it can go very fast. It really can.
I also think though that the cap is a little bit of a myth in the way that, you know, when they want somebody, they can always make it work out. And you just have to find that balance so that you don't put yourself in like cap hell like the Browns are in for the next couple of years.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I think what this cap means is anybody that's getting a new contract now is just going to get a bump. T. Higgins is going to be very happy one way or the other. Same with Jamar Chase and anybody else that's about to renegotiate a contract because the salary cap just went up. That just means anybody getting a new deal is their salaries are going to go up. So that money is going to be gone soon. But I think either way, whether they go with Justin Fields or Russell Wilson, the Steelers will still save some money. I can't imagine Russell Wilson costing a lot. Same with Fields. I would imagine both of them cost probably around a 20 million range, maybe cheaper. And, compared to other quarterbacks, that's a bargain. So that gives them an extra like 30 million to spend on, a wide receiver or whatever they want.
Well, and
I don't know if it's changed, but a lot of the predictions were that Wilson would cost more than Fields, which I thought was like, I get it. He's the more veteran quarterback with a more storied career or whatever. But to me, with Fields, you're also buying like a lotto ticket that this could be your guy for the future. Do you know what I mean? There's this possibility the ceiling is much higher than what you're going to get with Wilson. With Wilson, you know what it is. It's not changing.
Well, and
for the better.
Like you said earlier, LeeAnn, I think a lot of people maybe tend to forget or have forgotten that the Steelers had the cheapest quarterback room in the entire league this past year, and that was a hell of a luxury.
Yeah.
Luxury. Well, now it's going to cost more. It's going to go up a lot more.
Yeah. Yeah, and I just, if they go with Fields, I just hope that they actually are committed to him, because last year it was all about Russ. Even when Russ wasn't playing, it was all about Russ. Even when Russ was hurt and it was Justin Fields actually playing, they still developed the whole game plan around Russell Wilson. And it's like, here's a crazy idea. You got this great running quarterback. Why don't you utilize that? So hopefully, hopefully if it is Justin Fields, they actually use him correctly, because I think he has a potential, even if he sucks as a passer, just as a runner, I think he has a lot of potential.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
he definitely gives them that element, you know what I mean, of the dual quarterback that they need to have. You know what I mean? They just need to have it. Russell Wilson used to have it. He just doesn't anymore. Age happens. You know what I mean? But that's exactly what they need, for that offense, is a guy like Justin Fields. So all this Matthew Stafford talk, like, that's bullshit. You know what I mean? Because it's like, no. Like, who sees that working in any kind of
You're
system?
still buying a bridge quarterback, so why would you buy one that's so freaking expensive like Stafford? You know what I mean? When you at Fields, I mean, you're still really looking at a bridge quarterback. I mean, Stafford is up there in age too. What's he, 36?
37.
Mm-hmm.
So
Right, yeah.
The other part I have not liked about that, Allison, is that most people are saying it's going to require at least a first-round draft pick, and there's no way in hell that I feel the Steelers should give a first-round draft pick up for Stafford. I don't think they should give a first-round pick up for anybody.
Right.
And not
to
only
mention
that,
he
not
reportedly wants like $50 million a year. Like,
exactly. Not a first-round draft pick and eat up that much of a cap for a 37-year-old. Get out of town.
Get out of
here's
town.
the other thing. Somebody brought this up to me yesterday, and I thought this was so smart. I hadn't really thought about it. That Sean McVay is really smart. So if he is willing to move off of him, like maybe he's seeing something in Stafford, do you know what I mean, that other people aren't really seeing? Do you know what I mean? Maybe he feels he's at closer to that threshold than fans think he is. You know, and we went back and looked at some of those games last year, and he had some good games, but he had some really bad games too. And so how is that any different than Russell Wilson? You know what I mean? I'm not saying he's not a better quarterback than Russell Wilson at this point. I'm just saying that I don't know how you're getting for that amount of money. I don't feel like it lines up. For everything extra you'd have to give for him, are you really getting that much more of a benefit? You know, and you have to think maybe McVay is seeing something.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The Rams have made it very clear, like, dude, we don't want you. You're right, LeeAnn. That's exactly like they basically are like, hey, if you want to trade, go get out. You know, they're like yeah, like, and everything they're saying is basically like we're done with you, dude. So yeah,
it's because of that wife's podcast, but I don't buy that. There's way worse stuff that goes on with players than some guy's wife's podcast. Who cares if she talks shit about the whole organization? Who cares if she complains about the way they treated Stafford? Like every other week, you've got some player's dad on Twitter or mom on Twitter or wife on Twitter. And it happens all the time. No team is like, oh, we're going to let you seek a trade because of your wife's podcast. Come on.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Well, I'm sure Omar Kahn's watching us right now. Very
Oh, yeah.
Hi, Omar.
He's taking notes.
He is, yeah. No, but, you know, even for what you said earlier, which was excellent, was that, you know, the Rams are probably sitting there saying, look, somebody's going to be dumb enough, you know, because they do, right, with the salary cap. Even the NFL teams themselves, I think they feel like they have more money than what they have. And they go, yeah, we could throw $50 million towards that. That'll work. And you know, all of a sudden, and Stafford's a Cardinal or he's a
giant,
or a giant or whatever the hell he's going to be. And you're right. I mean, they throw this stuff out there, and somebody will probably buy. I'm not sure if they'll buy at the level they're asking, but again, let's see what happens on March 12th. You know,
you're always going to ask for more and then negotiate from there. But I mean, we managed to unload Chase Claypool for draft picks, so
right, yeah,
anything is possible.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And please no Aaron Rodgers under any circumstances. I just cannot see that happening.
No.
But the Trevor Lawrence thing just made me laugh so hard. The rumor that the Steelers wanted to trade.
I didn't. This is the first I'm hearing of that, so I may have just wiped it out of my mind.
A couple weeks ago.
I was off the planet then.
Yeah, the interesting thing about the one was that the guy who started the rumor isn't even like a football guy or an NFL guy, a guy from the Jaguars. He does like basketball and golf or something. And he dropped that he heard from this source that the Steelers called about Lawrence. And so then the rumors started that like maybe the Jags leaked that so that, you know, maybe people would start to call about Lawrence, but they wouldn't have to say like call about Lawrence. Or maybe the Steelers, some of these Steelers leaked it to put it out there to see if there's possible interest.
The funny thing about that whole thing is the Jaguars do not even have a general manager. Who would the Steelers have talked to? The janitor, the concessions guy, you know, I'd like 2 hot dogs and Trevor Lawrence, please.
Right.
They showed some guy today at the combine.
I'd take Trevor Lawrence. He's quietly had 2 seasons where he's thrown over 40 touchdowns.
Oh, yeah.
And not been bad. Now, Trevor Lawrence, I'd be all ears. He's young. He's got the long hair. Sorry, Allison, I won't make you start drooling again like you did last week. But, you know, maybe like short hair. I don't know. You know, but
exactly.
No, but that I would take. Not
Stefanski.
Not to Joe or LeeAnn's point. I don't want a 37 aging Matthew Stafford and his yappy wife podcast for $50 million in a first round draft pick. Give me Trevor Lawrence, who has no podcast. I don't know if he has a wife. No, he does. But no podcast, and But
he might be interested in, like you. I'd at least want to hear like, what is it you want? Do you know what I mean?
Oh,
like,
if it was serious, hell yeah,
makes sense. But these other
Joe has there. He's the only one I would legit like say, okay, what do you want for it?
But they're not letting him go. There's no way.
Right. But I mean, if whoever put that out there, if it was the Steelers, if it was the Jaguars or whatever, not this year. There's no way, because if they traded him this year, it would be like $120 million cap hit or some, insane thing like that. But maybe a year or 2 down the line, maybe when Trevor Lawrence reaches the age of 37, then we could trade for him.
Right. Pittsburgh in 10 years and be like, hey, we heard you were calling about Trevor. We want to see if you're still interested.
And that source will be like, see, told you it's happening.
Right. That's
Yes.
like Filiponi.
Oh,
I love how between the Ayuk thing of who was that one dude that became like famous for because he had all this insider information or something
He
like
just
that.
came up again today. I saw right before I got on the podcast that somebody was putting out that they might be exploring that again. I'm like, oh, here we go again.
Deebo Samuel, I'd be all in.
Did he
Deebo Samuel is
receive?
very affordable. I'd take Deebo Samuel in a heartbeat. He would be a major upgrade over what some of the things they've been trying to do with the aging. Oh gosh, can't even think of the guy's name. They brought him from the
Mike Williams.
Mike Williams.
Well, the other
And Jefferson.
Yes, but I mean, he would be. I would take a poke at that. I think Deebo Samuel would be very affordable at around $8 million a year. I'd bring him in a heartbeat right now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
He fits a lot of what the Steelers want to do in terms of dual threat option and whatnot. So
because let's be honest, it's not T. Higgins is not happening. Not happening. So if it's not T. Higgins, then who? Like, unless somebody else new comes up that we don't know about, it becomes a trade candidate. Like, there's just not like so many crazy options out there right now. They're all kind of mid.
No.
And you're looking at a draft full of kind of mid, like wide receiver.
Well, we joke about maybe who was listening to the podcast, and I really feel like somebody stole our idea because I know the last time I brought up the free agency wide receiver list. Mm-hmm. I read some of this, all of you last week and a lot of, or 2 weeks ago, I'm sorry. And we were a lot of head shaking and nothing. And somebody did the same thing this week on the fan. It's kind of puking my guts out, which is what you do when you listen to the fan, especially Tony. Makes you want to puke, literally. And they were doing it with the quarterbacks, right? But that list, folks, if you listen to the show 2 weeks ago, I mean, there's Chris Godwin, but most of the free agent wide receivers are well into their 30s.
Yeah,
it's exactly like Chris Godwin. I would take though.
Oh yeah.
But, I mean, they got to get younger, but I don't even know. My mock draft right now still doesn't have them probably grabbing wide receiver into the third, fourth round. I really think they're going to go defensive line. And then, one of the other guys that I kind of have pegged that I think could be there in the second round is Caleb Johnson out of Iowa, who I love. I love Cooper DeJean. You didn't listen to the damn thing I said about him. He turned out pretty good. I'm not saying I'm an Iowa Hawkeye fan, but I'm saying Caleb Johnson fits our running, what we want to do running the football very, very well. He should be available second round, not because he's not a good enough running back, but the thing you're seeing right now, just the way the league going is these elite running backs that would have went in the first round in the last couple of years, they're going in the second and third rounds because it's become such a passing league. So Caleb Johnson is a guy I have circled. I'd love to see the Steelers grab him in the second round.
Yeah, Nick Faribault had pointed out, going back to your wide receiver comment, Nick Faribault from Penn Live had pointed out that when they were discussing the top positions of the draft that the Steelers were looking at, they didn't even Kahn didn't even mention wide receiver, which I thought was interesting. And it just kind of goes to show maybe where they value or don't value the wide receiver in this draft.
It's a very weak wide receiver draft. That's why they're in such a conundrum. We talked about this last year when Plan B didn't work out. Free agency list is meh, and the wide receiver draft list is kind of meh. So we're kind of meh. Right now.
What's going on with the fans that are only thinking like their tunnel vision without like understanding or looking at who's coming out the draft, and they hear that somebody is going to maybe fall to the Steelers or some wide receiver will be there, and I keep trying to tell people like that isn't like a gift. Like some of these guys just aren't, like they're not that great. Do you know what I mean? Like in another draft, these guys wouldn't necessarily all be first round picks. And I think that's a hard thing to understand, that just because somebody gets picked in the first round doesn't mean they should be Kenny Pickett. You know what I mean? And so you don't want
Kenny Pickett.
You don't want to reach for somebody just because you need that person. So, I mean, this is a weird draft. The Steelers could take a best player available kind of situation that may not be the slot fans are demanding.
Here's what I'm hearing. Yeah, it is a very deep draft for defensive line and running back. And a week, like you said, Darren, a week for wide receiver. And now so many mock drafts have the Steelers taking that Ohio State wide receiver. I forget his name, some weird name. But what I'm hearing is there are two wide receivers that are very high. And And like this Ohio State guy, he's 3, but he's a distant third. So if they got him just because it's a need, that's a bad idea, because it's like you said, LeeAnn, he doesn't. They just because you get someone in the first round doesn't mean they deserve to be a first round. Like Terrell, this will be another Terrell Edmonds draft or something like that.
I think Jeremiah Smith, that's the receiver you're talking about. I think he's better than that. I just I don't know if he's there, he might get selected. I don't know. I would say he's probably one of my favorites too. He kind of came on late. Everybody knew he was capable of. He was injured, had some issues there with the Buckeyes. But then really, as you know, and I kind of said this when it started, Ohio State got really hot. Losing to Michigan, they don't want to hear this. It's probably the best thing that could have happened to them. And when Ohio State got in the playoffs, they got red hot. And he may have been arguably, quietly too, which is odd, the best player in the country over that last month and a half. And he started off the season that way, but again, like injury stuff like that, right? So he could sneak under the radar there for a little bit. And if he's there, and that's the thing, the Steelers are painting themselves into such a corner, guys, that they're going to have to give him a hard consideration, even though, to your point, Joe, you may be right. He may not be worth that.
I thought Joe was talking about Mbuka.
Emeka Egbuka.
That's who I thought you were talking about.
I think that Jeremiah, when you're talking about Darren, I don't think he's eligible this year, but he will definitely be like the number 1 next year.
Yeah,
because
if Joe could remember how he couldn't pronounce it, if Joe couldn't say Jeremiah Smith, that'd be pretty sad. He's like, I'm not gonna say his name because I can't pronounce it, and then you're like, I think you mean Jeremiah Smith, and I was like, oh,
I'm sorry,
Joe.
Sorry, Joe.
You're just funny. It's funny.
Yeah, well,
Smith is a very obscure name.
Too. And Buka's, I got my stuff mixed up too there.
Yeah,
he was the guy who was unstoppable.
But, who knows if he'll be there? I mean, there's a lot of mocks that have him going before us. It's a weird draft, like with those weird quarterbacks that are definitely going to get selected higher than they probably should. You know what I mean? That throws a loop at a lot of things, and I think it's a draft where they don't have like those 10 players that are clearly like the 10 best players. So I think you could see a situation where some team takes a player that nobody was expecting them to take earlier than what they would have, which could leave us with some unusual possibilities. Fingers
crossed.
Can
you hear that?
Killing me right now.
Plus, what's going to happen here is that these draft places are definitely changing before we get to it. Someone's going to trade a draft pick. Someone's going to trade up. Someone's going to pay too much for Stafford or whatever and give up a draft pick. So I don't think the draft is going to look like it looks right now, like it's going to about 6 weeks from now.
Mm-hmm.
How interested would you guys be in trading back?
Sure, why not?
Possibly.
I don't know.
I think if your goal is to strengthen the defensive line, I would be, because like Joe said, it's very deep. There's some very big stud defensive linemen that they could get at 20 or 27. If that's your goal, if that's what you want to do, I think that's a pretty smart idea.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to make a prediction. They're not going to trade back. They're going to trade up.
Oh, God.
They've done it almost
every
year now.
I'm excited.
And what has it gotten them, like, really?
Oh, God, she said.
Ow.
Not in a good way.
It got him a bunch of poop in a box. That's what it got him. Like, it's not their fault. brought to you by Guard.
Well, to them, I think you go back to what LeeAnn said. It's got to be the wide receivers are very thin. You either really want a wide receiver, and that's what you're going up to be, because there's not going to be much. It's going to be a very thinned out crowd after the first 2 go, or maybe that's it. First 2 or 3 are gone. That's, you might as well go draft in somebody, like a Terrell Edmonds.
Luther Burden is the one I was thinking of. That's like the second. The first good one is McMillan, I believe. Where is he from? Arizona, I believe. So he's like the consensus number 1, and he won't be anywhere. I mean, he'll go like top 10, but this Burden is supposed to be the second best. And then after that, there's a drop off. So I could see them trading up to get a Burden or something like that.
And Burden has a little bit better pedigree, right, at Missouri, playing in the SEC against top defensive backs. McMillan, it's tough. It's like he went to Arizona. You want to go back to Troy Edwards, where like He had all these yards and all these receptions, and I'm sitting there. And again, look, Lynn Swan and John Starworth did pretty damn well coming from like Texas, wherever, I forget what it was from, in nowhere, right? But playing in Arizona, I don't know, because Troy Edwards.
That was a different era, like with the HBCUs before those kids were playing at other universities. That was a different era.
Remember that draft. That was the draft where they desperately needed a wide receiver, and it was Torrey Holt and David Boston were like the top two guys, and the Steelers missed out on them. So the Steelers said, "Okay, we'll take the next best wide receiver available," and they reached for Troy Edwards, and look what happened. So hopefully history does not repeat itself.
Right. Yeah, Travis Hunter could easily go number 1 overall in the draft. Though a lot of them is Abdul Carter from Penn State, but we'll see. LeeAnn, you're not wrong. It's a weird draft, but it could be kind of fun because it's a wild card draft. I'm not sure what the hell is going to happen. I don't think there's a clear cut number 1. I don't know if Abdul Carter will be the overall pick by the time we get there either. Mm-hmm. A lot of guys are, if you don't saw this week, a lot of guys are opting out of the combine. A lot of guys.
Yes.
I don't know what I heard. You know who might drop? I actually heard someone mocking this guy to the Steelers. Shadur Sanders.
Can you bleep out things right now? Can I do what I want to
do? That's another one of those guys. If you draft him, you're drafting your dad.
Right.
They
already did that with Joey Porter.
Right, Warren got a crazy dad. But for me, it's like less about the whole Dion thing and all that drama, and more about the fact that I'm just not so sold on his talent. You know what I mean? You can say whatever you want to say about his stats, but he hasn't been consistently proven at a high level. Do you know what I mean? Colorado State. I definitely didn't feel like he had the year last year that everybody thought he was going to have. And, that just makes me nervous. He's not ready yet. So I don't know. I don't.
Yeah, there's a
have
lot
fun with that,
of red
Giants.
flags there.
Can we just do
have fun with that New York Giants?
Like go up for Arch Manning or somebody in 26.
Mm-hmm.
It's gonna be good.
Yeah, I think you said that the last time. That's right. Tank it for Arch Manning.
Yeah, I don't want to tank.
Tanking for Manning.
The Penguins are tanking right now, and maybe they can tank like the Penguins. And there's a lot of guys there, and this is just maybe me coming from being back in the day and just coaching back in the day. Cam Ward's a guy that a lot of guys talk about, but if you ever saw Cam Ward, I swear I say he's like one of the Golden Girls. He holds the football like cheesecake. It's like right here. It's as if you watch his highlight reel, it's like always right here. And when you hold a ball high like that all the time, the chances of that coming out or slipping out and just, I just don't like. And that stuff I know you can work on. I know there's techniques and stuff like that, but there's not anybody. Gabriel's probably the only guy I would say if the Steelers were picking in the top 3, Gabriel would be a guy I'd be like, that would be the guy. Other than that,
some of that working on your hand stuff isn't easy though. Look at Joey Porter Jr. He still can't get it figured out. He's been getting yelled at it since he was at Penn State.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yeah, Taylor didn't have the hang of it either. But
yeah. The other thing that concerns me is everybody might want to copycat the Eagles. The Eagles had that great defensive line, and maybe everybody is going to want to draft the defensive lineman. It's like, well, we want to be like the Eagles and have this great defensive line. So that would, you don't want if they're making a run on defensive lineman, you don't want to the 8th best defensive lineman or something. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know. We'll see.
And a point that I was thinking about when you guys were talking about wide receivers is Roman Wilson, right? Like we still don't know. You know what I mean?
Like draft pick this year, really.
Right? Yeah. You don't because he's going to have his second rookie season, right? So nobody knows. He played in the Raiders game, like 7 snaps or something. Right. That's it, right? So it's like, hopefully, we can still, make something out of him before, so we don't, end up regretting that pick.
Yeah.
I just have a feeling that he's just going to be a big box of poop.
Right. Yeah.
I'm
very
don't know.
nervous.
It's just a hunch.
Oh! I laughed so hard I knocked my shit over.
It makes me nervous that they didn't even want to try to bring him back sooner or get him involved. And look, I'm not a professional football player, so maybe there is something to be said for that whole, like, when you miss the whole preseason, it's too hard to catch up thing. I don't know, but seems like you could have used him for something.
They couldn't have simplified something. They were in desperate need of a wide receiver. They couldn't have.
It's not like he doesn't know how to play football. It's not like you really have to teach him like Latin or something. Do you know what I mean?
Hey, dude, run a curl pattern. Like how hard is this?
Right. So that's the thing that for me, it was always a little bit weird. Like you could have had him do something simple, but then on the flip side of that, I look at like they brought in Mike Williams and he had first like amazing catch against the Commanders. And then they were like, yeah, we're not going to use him again. So if they're using those other guys, then does it make sense why they weren't using Roman Wilson? Like, even if we don't agree with the logic. It's hard to say. It'll be very interesting to see what happens with him this year.
It is odd with him. I was at training camp the day he got hurt. In fact, I texted Joe and I said he's on a cart right now. And Joe's like, "Oh God!" And it was an oh God moment. And I don't know. Didn't look good. And you're right. Who knows, LeeAnn? And it that's just a mysterious too. The whole thing with the receiving is so. I don't know what Plan B was. It sure as hell didn't work, and it is just an odd situation. I don't know better to describe it than being odd. They're in a hell of a spot right now at wide receiver, and we'll see how they fix it. We'll see. It's you don't even hear them mention Roman Wilson. Like Omar Kahn. I was kind of listening for that today too. Like Omar Kahn say, "Hey, we know Wilson's back on the right track. We're confident in his abilities this year." It's like, hey, yeah, which we're not going to talk about Roman Wilson here. It's like
or whatever.
You want to go back 2 years? I mean, he was unstoppable for Michigan. That he was incredible all through the playoffs, all through his senior year. I mean, he was insane. And I was very excited when we drafted him, and except
I think he
pissed
him off.
Frame worried me.
Yeah, I think he pissed them off. So with free agency coming up, who might be cut? The ones I keep hearing are Larry Ogunjobi and Cole Holcomb. Larry Ogunjobi would save them, I think, about. I mean, his cap hits $10 million, but I think they would save about $7 million, and with Cole Holcomb they would save about $6 million. So, I think those are the most likely ones. Holy crap! Miles Killebrew is making $4.25 million. Why?
Miles Killebrew, like he should.
Yeah.
Like that, you have to go to a Pro Bowl.
Pay him what he wants.
Yeah, he's a difference maker.
He is. It's true.
Okay.
I mean, considering that we signed Derek Watt to do the same, be a special teams ace. You know what I mean? Like,
we need to pay Miles Killebrew.
Right.
I sure hope that we find some way to bring back Cordarrelle Patterson, because without him running to the buffet every other play, I don't know how we'll be able to get through the season.
I feel like somehow we can incorporate Cologuard in there too.
I agree. There's your big box of poop.
Right, exactly.
That's what I was trying to allude to.
Yeah.
Deebo Samuel would be a hell of an upgrade from Cordell Patterson.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like a Cologuard versus a colonoscopy.
You could sign a box of poop and it would have been faster than Cordarrelle Patterson on some of those plays last year.
And the fixation on him, like to continue to keep playing him and putting him in was just bizarre.
It was.
And the funniest thing is they didn't use him in the playoff game, and he complained. Like, dude, what are you complaining about?
Right. Yep.
Like, he would have made a difference.
Like, we are not watching the same football games. I am sorry.
No,
I was like, if only they used me, we would have won.
Right, exactly. No.
You need somebody who really loves him to be like, look, honey, I really love you, and I think you're amazing. But now it's time to have like a little bit of a reality check.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
Do you think Cam Sutton is going to be one of the guys that gets let go?
I would like that. Yes.
Yeah, I'm all on board for that.
I think.
Me too.
I think that whole thing was a complete disaster, and I think there's absolutely no
He
chance.
did nothing on the field to redeem, and not redeem because that's the wrong word. You can't redeem yourself for what you did, but to make that decision to bring him in makes sense. Like there was nothing about what he did. You can't even say like, well, he did help the team late, in this season because we got worse. And I felt like they were continuing to play him. And, you've got like Minka Fitzpatrick picking up slack for him, and Minka's taking all the heat. Patrick Queen's picking up slack for him, taking all the heat,
Well, and it was clearly evident some of the defensive players were calling him out in the last month of the season.
As they should have.
Yeah, as they should have. Yeah, exactly right. So
I know people were like, who do you think they're talking about? I'm like, really? Come on.
Really?
Come on.
Yeah.
That was so weird. Another thing I've heard is they're thinking of getting another guard and basically making McCormick a backup.
I heard that.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
They might move Faltanu to guard, but I don't see that happening.
Right.
I think with this point, with this offensive line, you're either in or out. And the Steelers need to figure out, since it's a theme night, they either shit or get off the pot with this line. Like if you're going to do that to Mike McCormick, because guess what? That didn't work out too well with Beanie Bishop.
No.
And he was striving the right way, and Mike McCormick was striving the right way. You had Wolfie, on DBE a couple times saying he thought he was maybe the one guy over the last 3 weeks or 4 weeks who's showing the most moxie, the most improvement on the team. So why the hell would you bench him? Okay, if you start out and he does regress or something, okay, yeah, have a backup plan. But I think he's got to be a starter going into this.
Yeah, well, that's what I thought. If like I said, Sutton came in and he blew the doors off and looked like what you hoped he would look like, then you understand. But when that's clearly not the case, like put Bishop back in. Second receptions on the team. I mean, why aren't we playing this kid?
I think it kind of ruined the whole team. It ruined the whole defense.
Yeah,
it seemed like there was like a mutiny going on or something.
I wonder how much of an impact that really had. I mean, you would like to think something like that wouldn't destroy everything, but it really felt like that. He started and things just went downhill from there. And
they had plenty of time because it was week 8 when he came back when Cam Sutton came back, week 9 or whatever. There was plenty of time. They knew early on that he was not the Sutton that they thought they had.
Because he was practicing, right? He was allowed to practice for part of that time at least. So
they had time to fix that. They had time to be like, Sutton, you're benched. Beanie, come back. It just didn't happen like that.
So don't make the same mistake with Mike McCormick is what is my point on that,
Right, yeah. Or just in general, like putting Jones where he doesn't naturally play, Fotanu, you know what I mean? All that offensive line crap. Like McCormick was playing decently at so why do that?
Maybe Tomlin wanted to be right more than he wanted to be have a good play.
I was saying to somebody yesterday that I think the offensive line, they weren't good, but I think considering when you stop and think about all the injuries they had and the crazy stuff they were doing with moving Jones and him not doing well, like actually in many ways they did better than I thought they would have. Like, when we lost James Daniels, I thought we were going to be in much worse shape. So
they had to play 2 rookies.
Yeah.
All things considered,
I think Sayamalu was picking up the slack a lot for his friend at tackle, but and made him look bad. But I still thought that overall as a group, Dan Moore played better until the end of the season.
I mean, they have the making of possibly a good offensive line if Jones moves a left tackle and does well. Frazier was a hit at center. We don't know what's going to happen with McCormick. Whoever it's going to be, that's fine. Fautanu, from what I understand, I mean, I've heard nothing but good things about him. So
it has about Daniels, right? Whether he's coming back or they find somebody else.
Seems like it seems like it's not going to be him because I think he had an Achilles injury and you don't like that's a real hard
That's
injury
true.
to come back from. So
Mhm.
so I think he's gone either way. But
Yeah.
we'll see.
Yep. Yeah.
One more thing. I believe it was the Packers are trying to. They want to put a vote to ban the tush push. I am all for banning that stupid thing. To me, that's not football. It's rugby. It's the stupidest looking
That's
thing.
what Bill Power said.
Yeah.
I hate
Well, they
it.
have Malata. They have a former rugby player on their team.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't be
There you
too much
go.
of a stretch, right?
Yeah.
So
I think last year Mike Tomlin was the only coach to speak up at the whatever that committee is, the rules
owners meeting.
whatever
Rule
the-
committee,
what
yeah.
is it? Whatever that committee is. He was the only one to speak up and try to change it. And I guess the others were like, oh, it's innovative and other teams are allowed to do it too. And, all of this stuff. But Cam Hayward was talking about it on his podcast today because he got asked, would he be mad if his team was the team that requested that the Eagles ban it, like if he was on the Packers? And he said, I wouldn't like it in the sense of like being a snitch kind of thing. And he said, but if we got rid of that play, he said, I'd be all for it. He said, they promote all this player safety stuff and you can't say that. He said, people are going to start teeing off on quarterbacks, because there's just no reason. It's the only thing you can do. And he said, and then you've got your running backs literally running like head first into their tight ends. You have guys like Chris Jones that get hurt trying to defend that play, that weird thing he did in the Super Bowl.
Yeah. Hayward's been really vocal about it because, this is like the second year they've just talked about whether they're going to ban it or not, right? So I know Cam Hayward last year was even more adamant. He was like, I think like one of you said, it's not football. It's not football. So why are we doing it anymore? So yeah,
Well,
I'm not surprised that he would be fine if it was banned.
It's the biggest thing, Joe, since the honking tonk man tried to get the DDT banned. If you remember that. But no, I'm all for it too. I've just not been able to get behind a tush push. No pun intended. I'm a tush guy, but not with this kind of a thing. So
just Cologuard.
Cologuard, yeah.
Here's why.
That's what they should start calling Cologuard is tush push, like that's on the box.
Today's Cologuard moment brought to you by the tush push. Yeah,
by the Eagles tush push.
And it was the Browns of all teams.
The Browns.
Yes.
Well, they already have dude wipes, right? So it sort of makes sense, right? I think the Browns are like the official sponsor, or the dude wipes are the official sponsor of the Cleveland Browns or whatever. And it's like, what? Like, how am I not surprised about that?
Right. I am notoriously like against anything that I can't do well. Do you know what I mean? So like that to me is like puts the tush push right in that category. Like the Steelers haven't done it. They haven't done it well. So we clearly need to just ban that because
okay. I think that's exactly what happened when this first came up, and it was the Eagles. I believe it was the Eagles that first did this. Every team is like, "Ooh, we could do that too." Yeah, let's allow that. Now they see that only the Eagles can do it well. Remember the Bills tried that in the NFC Championship game and they failed miserably.
Oh, it was bad.
So I think every other team's like, well, if only one team's actually good at this, let's not let them do it. Let's vote against this thing.
Yeah, if it was league wide, like if it had taken the league by storm, nobody would be fucking.
No one would say anything. But it's because nobody else can do it, and look, there's some validity to that, and validity to the fact that somebody's going to get hurt doing this, and then what are they going to say? You know what I mean?
Yep.
Well, when some quarterback gets, like knocked out for the year because of this, then they'll ban it.
Yeah, Cam Hayward said points. Anything that scores points, that's all the league cares about. That trumps everything. He said so. As long as you see something like this, it continues to advance the ball, continues to pick up first downs, leads to scoring more points. They're going to be behind it. He said they don't care about defenses. What happens to them?
Every rule change benefits the offense. All right. Well, what have we learned tonight?
Oh God, here we go.
We've learned that it's good to poop in a box. Cologuard. we've learned that please follow the Donut Bag podcast. If you're not doing that, LeeAnn, what's your podcast?
Steeler Sanctuary.
Okay, that's another one. If you're not following the Donut Bag or Steeler Sanctuary, follow Matthew Stafford's Yappy Wife podcast.
Oh God, yeah.
If that's not the name of it, it should be.
It should be. I mean,
Yappy Wife.
Change the name of my podcast if I were her.
Yappy Wife.
Right.
Anyway, okay, guys, thanks so much. It's always
Thank you. Have a good night, everybody.
Bye,
Thank you.
guys.
okay.
Bye.
Good night, everybody.